From its rumored beginnings as a concept by the nickname NX, through what may end up being the highest-selling first year of a console in video game history,
we're taking a look at the Nintendo Switch on its one-year anniversary. This is On the Shelf.
Hello everyone and welcome to On the Shelf Podcast,
A place where we talk about current Switch news and share our opinions on current and future titles. We're your hosts. I'm Soul.
And I'm Cyrix. Thanks for joining us.
So I know a lot of collectors we've spoken to have different criteria for what they're collecting on the Switch. Part of the beauty of the Switch is that it has such a broad appeal. What's your collection strategy?
As a full US release collector, I'm just focusing on games that get a physical release in the US. I'm trying to focus on games released with little fanfare or limited marketing, usually from smaller developers. I leave first party and AAA and sports titles, licensed properties for last when they go on deep discount. I know you're going for a more complete and casting a wider net. So what's your strategy?
Oh, I'm definitely working to complete the full US physical set, but I'm going for something a bit more ambitious. I've been working on getting a copy of every game with English on the cartridge. I start with the US set, but if a title is not announced to be coming to the US and I get wind that it'll have English on the cartridge, I'll try to import it. There are some potential pitfalls, such as what happened to the Aqua and Snowmoto games being announced much later for the US, and the crazy cost of importing a title like Bayonetta 1 from the Infinite Climax set exclusive to Japan. But I really enjoy the pursuit of some of the more odd games that we won't necessarily see on a cartridge here.
You definitely get the thrill of the hunt with that. Some people might wonder why we go to these links, and the thrills are certainly part of it, but there's nothing thrilling about buying a game based on bin 10, I can assure you. But it really comes down to preservation. Physical collectors like the idea of always having access to their games long after the eShop closes or discontinues for certain systems.
So March 3rd, 1 year of the Switch. It's been an amazing year. We've had a ton of different cool things come out for it. We've got two great Game of the Year candidates. We've got amazing reveals a year ago with YouTube. We have sales figures through the roof. Nintendo is just really killing it in this first year. I thought maybe we could spend some time talking about that.
Yeah, that's great. One of the main topics that we can probably jump into is going to be things like the game carts that require downloads, underpatched releases, which is getting a lot of flack right now because of games like Payday coming out, because the Nintendo Switch's version is coming out at a much earlier release version than the rest of the consoles, and even worse when you compare it to the PC.
It is pretty amazing to see what's happened in 1 year, though. Let me ask you, what is your biggest surprise on this system?
Well, my biggest surprise for me personally was games like Dragon Quest Builders, because I am far from a fan of Minecraft, but once I played the demo, it was already too late for me to pre-order, so I ended up having to wait an additional few days to get mine. But it's been probably the game that I've been most addicted to. What really surprised me was Knights of Azure 2. But if you can get past the fan service, because believe me, there's a lot of it, the game at its core is actually really fun, and I really enjoyed the story more than I thought I would.
So that's a game that I haven't put as much time in, and I would say that I've got a couple of surprises of my own. The biggest one is probably the one that I've played with my son the most, which is ARMS. I can tell you right now that when the first teaser came out back on October 20th of, if you can believe it, 2016 by this point, I looked at that game and I kind of shook my head. I thought, there's no depth. It doesn't look fun. It just looks like a really wishy-washy title. Maybe some kids will get, a hold of that and think, oh, I can just throw some punches, that kind of thing, get about 15 minutes worth of entertainment, and that's it. But I've played that game almost as much as anything else, if not more in some ways, because I can play two players with my kid. He's got the skill to play it, and I can enjoy it with him.
ARMS was definitely something that flew under the radar for a lot of people. I picked it up late, and actually picked it up used when GameStop was doing a buy two, get one free on their used titles. And I put in a little bit of time into it, but it didn't strike me as really a surprise, because in the end of the day, it's Nintendo. And I don't get surprised by how good Nintendo games tend to be, with the exception of Zelda being the biggest, greatest Zelda since something like, I don't know, Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I think that's been pretty amazing. Zelda was just something else. Right before the Switch had come out, I had finished going through the HD remake on the Wii U for, boy, did the title just escape.
Twilight Princess?
Twilight Princess. I just went through the Wii U's HD remake of Twilight Princess, and I had such a blast with that. And then the Switch comes out, and I play Breath of the Wild, and the scope and complexity of that game just blew everything else away. The physics engine was something else. I had not seen something like that in a Nintendo game ever before.
I haven't actually put in Zelda. I'm in the process of trying to play through my library, and games like Zelda and Xenoblade, where you have to put in 80 to a million hours to complete and complete properly, are games that I've kind of backburnered until I have a little bit more time to devote to it. But there has been more than one occasion where I have put Zelda in my Switch and then talked myself out of starting it.
There's a couple of other games that kind of surprised me, and I want to put them out there. Axiom Verge and Tiny Barbarian DX. Both of these are pixel games, both on a smaller scope than something like Breath of the Wild. I've had a blast with both of those games, completed both of them, and I've just been blown away. What's your take on that?
Axiom Verge is one that I push to everybody. When somebody looks at me and asks me, what game do I have to own aside from Mario Odyssey and Zelda, I always tell them Axiom Verge. It's a cheap title. It's phenomenal in terms of gameplay, but then it gets even more phenomenal when you realize it was coded by one guy over the course of like 7 years or something. It's insane. Now, Tiny Barbarians, on the other hand, the only thing good I really have to say about that is that it's a Nicholas game, and Nicholas is doing all kinds of stuff for us. The gameplay itself is reminiscent of old hard NES titles, and that really gets the blood flowing for me. But I really kind of hit a hard spot in that game on more than one occasion, and it was just like, let me get past this, please. I know you're hard, but now you're just being hard for the sake of being hard. But the throwbacks to older games, that was a thing of beauty.
That's one of the things I really like the most about it. When you play some of the games and you realize that there's deep, deep homages to things like Castlevania, when you see some of the levels in there that really throw back the Donkey Kong piece, Rampage, you just play through this game and you see all of this reminiscent Castlevania levels, and I really just fell in love with the game instantly and could not stop playing. The bosses are definitely hard, especially the final boss. The final boss took me hours of repetition to get past, but in the end, I felt like the reward was just as good as some of the old NES hard games. I think that's why it was such a big surprise to me coming into this. I have a lot of other favorites that I've seen this year. I mean, you talked about a few of the games that are out there. There's just so many. I mean, we've seen, just in physical form, we've seen over 75 games in the US, not counting what's on the eShop. And I think that the amount of games that are coming out is just amazing in the first year. And that's just it. It's just the first year. What's your thoughts there?
I am really enjoying the amount of games that they're pushing out right now. A lot of it, to a lot of people, feels like shovelware. You've got a lot of indie titles coming out, and we can thank Nicholas for that. But Nicholas gives you a good value for your money. You're paying $30 for a game, and if you get one of the first runs, I mean, you're looking at a lot of inserts. I mean, we're talking about throwbacks to stuff like books. When did instruction manuals go out of style? For me, they never went out. And the fact that Nicholas is giving us those today for some games that normally wouldn't get them on other systems, stuff like It'll Do 2 and Cave Story, Wonder Boy, they're all getting great packages. And I'm just loving that.
And they don't even look like they're slowing down. Nicholas has a number of titles on the horizon coming out. And that's one of the best things about this, is that we get both the big titles from people like Nintendo, but we also get these great smaller indie titles from publishers like Nicholas. If we kind of take a step back, so we've got all of this great gaming that's happening right now, but if we take a step back into time and we look at that very, very first teaser that happened on October 20th in 2016, did you imagine that a year and a few months later, we'd be seeing a system that has sold more in its first year than the Wii U sold in its entire lifetime?
Not from Nintendo, no. I didn't lose faith in Nintendo because of the Wii U, but the Wii U was certainly a disappointment. But that teaser, it really made you think that they were kind of trying to bite off more than they could chew with it. I mean, who makes a hybrid console that can run the way they were showing it run? And then, of course, when it first came out, everybody was like, well, where's Skyrim? Skyrim was in your teaser. You know, I want to play Skyrim on the go. And there was really no word on it. And then later on, we ended up getting Skyrim. But, you know, you're looking at it and you're like, this is beautiful. And how can these images run on a portable console? I was very skeptical of it. I was very skeptical of the Switch. The teaser got me thinking, but I was very reserved, and it wasn't necessarily the Wii U's fault. It was just what they were trying to push. Of course, the Wii U didn't really help that.
Now, let's stop on Skyrim for just a second, though, because how disappointed are you in the port that we got, in Bethesda's work on this? They didn't take the time to fix a lot of bugs. Sure, we've got Skyrim on the Switch, but it feels like Bethesda is just going to put Skyrim on everything. There's, you know, a lot of complaints out there about what that end product ended up looking like.
Yeah, I haven't personally played Skyrim on the Switch. I've been reading all the articles and watching all the news surrounding it, and I'm seeing people who are happy that they have it, and I'm seeing people that are upset that it's not what they expected, and it's just a mixed bag. Personally,
it can be a little bit of both,
yeah,
though, right? I mean, we can have both the happiness of getting it and the fact that it's, you know, maybe not what we all thought it would be.
No, when it comes to games like Skyrim, you have a certain expectation that they're going to reach, and they, you know, of course, you also have the people who are diehard Skyrim fans that are, you know, if it's not up to this level, it's not good, and it's not Skyrim. And so I certainly understand how ravenous the Skyrim fans are, and I certainly understand how some fans are just tired of Skyrim showing up everywhere. I mean, I own a couple of copies of it, and I haven't even really played it, but maybe an hour.
Okay, well, take something like Doom. What did you think about Doom coming out, and the fact that we just got a patch that fixed a few bugs, especially the big sound bug, and then gave motion controls to the game?
Now, Doom surprised me. We'll break it down. So the main thing about Doom that really surprised me was the fact that Nintendo, you know, they're getting third-party support, which they didn't really get on the Wii U, so that was a little bit of surprising. But the big thing that surprised me was the fact they were getting a mature-rated, bloody, gory first-person shooter at all. So that was something that I was really interested in. The fact that it runs as smooth as it does, I mean, you get a little hiccups that here and there, you know, it's not as clean as you're going to see on a PC version, but it was never going to be, because the Switch is not powerful enough to run, you know, 1080p, 60 frames, especially in handheld. So, you know, people are going to poo-poo on that. That's on them. They can complain all day long about how it doesn't look like Doom. But the fact that you have Doom portable, they're supporting it by releasing patches to fix issues. Yeah, people are like, well, these issues shouldn't have existed when it came out. That may or may not be true, but when the game came out, it was at least playable. I mean, look at other things that come out. WWE, you can't play that game.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, absolutely terrible.
So, yeah, people shouldn't complain.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. WWE 2K18 was the bottom of the bottom. I've hated on a few different titles. This is definitely one of them. It's got more than one problem. It's got frame rate difficulties. It's got freeze ups. It's got downloads for it. You know, let's talk about that for a second. White banner games. That's been a huge topic. There's a lot of good stuff with the Switch this year, right? We've had a whole year of fantastic, but we have these games that require a massive download on top of what's already an expensive cartridge, or if you bought it on the eShop, already a large download.
Yeah, White Banner is definitely a huge strafe for me. And as from a collector standpoint, it's also a little bit of a letdown in that, you know, you're going to have access to the cartridge at all times, but if you've got to download extra game files, you may not be able to play that game forever. And even so, you know, some games that have these excessive downloads, they're just, you know, like the download codes you get from some of them, Resident Evil, Bayonetta in the US, you have full game downloads. That's not such a big problem. It's the other games like WWE and FIFA and NBA. Those games require downloading additional files just to start the game up. I mean, at least with Doom, the Doom has an initial first day patch that added multiplayer, but you could not have a network connection and you could still at least play the game off the cartridge. It was unpatched, but you could still play it, right?
Yeah, I don't like the idea, though, that I'm going to shell out for a physical cartridge and they can't bother to give me everything that I need for all aspects of the game on that cartridge, even two. So look at something like the Resident Evil package. Why couldn't we get two cartridges? If it's too much for one, make two cartridges. I'm willing to pay that extra money for the extra cartridge just to have the physical copy, because in a decade and a half, whenever Nintendo decides to stop supporting the downloads for some of these things or patches go away, I'm not going to be able to play that on that platform. I'm not going to be able to keep that in the collection at some point.
Yeah, and the fans are there because, I mean, look at Bayonetta. The Climax Edition comes out in Japan, and they're like, oh, we sold 11,000 copies of it in Japan. But how many of those copies stayed in Japan? I know so many people who have shown me pictures and posted about how, oh, look at my Climax Edition. I got it from Japan. And it's like, yeah, I could do that too if I wanted to spend the money now. But they made it so short in supply that it's people are still buying it, but it's so hard to come by. And you got people who are spending $180 on it when it's $100 if you could have gotten it day of. So the people are there. They want two cartridges on a game download, a double pack like that. Resident Evil should have been.
Well,
that
yeah,
way.
I'm one of them. I'm absolutely one of them. I spent way too much money to try to get that game, and there was other factors in how I had to do that. But at the same time, I want to have this collection. I want to make sure that it's something I could play years down the road. I can take that cartridge, stick it in there. It's got English on the cartridge. It's got the full game. Put it in and go. I look at something like that and I think at least somebody has that. But then I see the announcement for Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2. I can't explain this.
Okay, so Mega Man Legacy 1 and 2. I kind of have a theory behind that. I'm thinking that the one collection, according to what I've read, the one collection on the PS4 is roughly 500 megs. And then you have the other collection, which is something like 5 gigs. So these cartridges, they could put both games on one cartridge, essentially, because the cartridges are something like 16 gigs, something like that. So they could essentially put both these games on one cartridge. But what that does is that doesn't allow them to break the games apart for the eShop. Because they're gonna create this menu system for the cartridge to let you pick between the two different collections or just have one list of games. And then on the eShop, you're expected to purchase 2 games to play what is essentially one cartridge. So rather than fight that, the only other option would be to make 2 cartridges. But then you've got a 500 meg card or 500 meg game that's going on to a 16 gig card.
But that's essentially what we have, right? We have a 500 meg cartridge, and then we have a download code for the second game.
I thought it was reversed. Is it not reversed?
I will have to look at that. To me, either one of those just seems silly. Why can't Capcom take the time to make a little bit of a menu? Just put something on the screen that allows you to choose between 2 different icons. Start the game.
Yeah, I feel like it's going back to waist size of a cartridge, and this is why they don't have 2. And the fact that if they created a menu system to put it on one, that people would complain about 2 different versions of it in the eShop, or they'd have to release it as one in the eShop, in which case it's not a Legacy Collection 1 and 2, it is a Legacy Collection, period.
That's true. That's true. I think when you look at this, though, there's a lot of different ways that a collector could probably justify one thing or another. I just know that I would like to have a physical copy of that. I am a huge fan of the original Mega Man games and even the Mega Man X series, which we have yet to see. It's coming. They've already announced that, right? And then we're going to have a new Mega Man 11 later in the year, which is going to be awesome, I'm sure, just from the footage that they've shown. It's going to be
everything Mighty Number 9 should have been.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe Mighty Number 9 will make its way to a cartridge for the Switch too, and wouldn't that be a shame?
Yeah, that would be a dust collector on my shelf for sure.
Absolutely. So let me ask you another question, because we're still talking about this whole first year thing. We had that trailer. in that October date. And then they had the full reveal January 13th, 2017. Tell me what went through your head when you saw everything that they announced in January of 2017.
I was boycotting Nintendo. The lack of availability for the NES Classic made me really sour about everything that Nintendo was doing at the time. So I made sure that I didn't get super excited about things. In hindsight, it was everything was exciting. The idea, the whole premise, everything was exciting to me in hindsight. At the time, I had no excitement for it at all because it was just another Nintendo is going to put out a limited supply and create all this demand, and people are going to be angry, and I'm not going to be able to get one. And so it was a big to-do back then for me. So I didn't have a whole lot of excitement at the time, but going back, I feel like I kind of cheated myself out of what would have been a really exciting time.
I will tell you that as a big fan of the Classic series, and I'm not going to venture off too much into that, but I'll just say that I have both the NES and the SNES Classic. Huge fan. I've been on the Nintendo train for most of my life, and although I will admit there's tons of flaws, they have lots of things going on with, their distribution. They somehow turned it around and got lots of Switches out. I have seen very little complaints about availability on that after maybe the first few weeks.
In my area, there wasn't a whole lot until probably late October. Late October is when they started showing up more on shelves in my area. I got mine in November, but I had started seeing them staying on shelves. I mean, I saw them here and there. I saw them staying on shelves probably the end of October.
Kind of a long time between release and being able to stay on the shelf, but it still doesn't compare to what that NES Classic went through. I mean, if you didn't get that on day one, you almost didn't get it.
Yeah, and the SNES Classic was, when they corrected what they did with the SNES Classic, that was when I jumped on board. I told myself, if I can find an SNES Classic, then I will buy the Switch. I will go back into it, because NES has been my wheelhouse for a while. I speedrun all NES games. I still have my NES hooked up right now to my computer so that I can do capturing for footage and stuff like that. So the NES has always been my wheelhouse. It's always been the workhorse. I have the NES, the SNES. I have a Virtual Boy, so I've been big into Nintendo for a long time. But that NES Classic soured me so bad. It probably didn't help that the Wii U was such a letdown also. But I told myself, if I find an SNES Classic, I'll jump on the Switch train. And I ended up actually finding two of them. One I found used at a GameStop for $75, which I thought was insane. So I picked up a second one. My plan was to gift it to a friend. He ended up not needing it, so I still have two for now. But I'm playing around with one of them, and the other one's still sealed. So that's what I'm doing with that. And so I jumped on the Switch train as a result. And I am so happy I did. Aside from the fact that starting so late, my collection has really hit my wallet hard because I have so many games to try to get back to.
So what did you start to play as soon as you got it? What was your thing? Because you came in later. I got mine at launch, so there was a limited library to be able to play. Obviously, everybody that got it at launch pretty much jumped right into Breath of the Wild, but you weren't in that situation. What did you end up playing right away?
So first game that I actually bought, I bought before I got the Switch, and it came in the mail the same day I got my Switch. Was I Am Setsuna. I imported a copy of I Am Setsuna because I like to support I like to support Square. I like to support Tokyo RPG Factory. I really want them to do well because they look like they're doing good games. They're just not hitting the right stride, I guess, because we can get more into that when we talk about Lost Sphere later. But I Am Setsuna was the first game I got, and I'm put in a lot of time in that. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm at the end. But when I bought my Switch, I purchased 4 games at the time. I bought Mario Kart 8 DX, and that was probably the main play game for me. I bought Bomberman. I bought Mario Odyssey because that was a must-own. And I bought Just Dance 2017. But that was because my wife wanted me to. She agreed. She agreed to let me buy the Switch if I got Just Dance, because at the time I bought it from Toys R Us. They were running a buy one get one 40% off sale, so I bought 4 games and got 2 for full price and 2 for 40% off. and then I actually held off on getting Zelda for like another couple days, actually, because I had friends come in that weekend, and a friend of mine was like, I'm going to go buy a Switch 2, and he bought Mario Kart 8, and I was like, well, I'm already here, so I ended up buying a Pro Controller and Zelda at the time. So within the first 3 days, I had 6 games.
Just the fact that some of these games that are out there are the quality that they are, and you can pick them up and just jam, have a good time with friends. Mario Kart on this is easily the definitive version of Mario Kart, in my opinion. The graphics are on point, everything from the Wii U and more. It's just an amazing race game, alone the fact that it's a Mario Kart. But I've had such a blast playing that, playing it online, playing it at home. You can pick that game right up and just go for, 15 minutes. You could play for 2 hours, whatever you want. That game is just incredible.
Nintendo did a really good service for themselves by not creating a new Mario Kart, but re-releasing Mario Kart 8 with all the DLC, calling it a deluxe edition, because there were so many people who didn't adopt the Wii U. I did. In fact, my Wii U came bundled with Mario Kart 8. That's when I adopted the Wii U, which was late in the Wii U's life comparatively. So a lot of people missed out on Mario Kart 8. So offering Mario Kart 8, which was such a great game, and then throwing in all the DLC as a deluxe edition made it all the better. And it worked out perfectly for the Switch. And I can't talk enough about how great it was that they chose to do it that way. Hint, hint, give us Smash Brothers Deluxe, please. So that is, that was really a shining point for when I picked up my Switch. It was like, I have to have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I played it on Wii U, loved it. I need all of the DLC, the extra stuff they added in, the tracks and stuff like that. And then I knew that it wouldn't be hard to find pickup games of Mario Kart. You can probably go to an airport and find pickup games of Mario Kart.
Yeah, Mario Kart really has such a broad appeal. And I want to mirror exactly what you said. I'm really happy that Nintendo took some of the games from the Wii U and have decided to do these kind of re-releases, remasterings of that. We're going to see a few other titles coming like that. Donkey Kong is one of them. Kind of excited to see that happen.
Hyrule Warriors.
Yes, Hyrule Warriors being another. These kinds of titles that are fantastic, but really didn't have the audience just because the Wii U was the Wii U. I really want to see that kind of bring the best out of what that generation of gaming was, show some of the folks that didn't get a chance to play it what that kind of quality was, and then show what they can do with it now on the Switch. So it'll be really interesting to see where they take that. And yes, Smash would be fantastic. Although I'd be happy with either the remaster or a new Smash. Either one would be great for me.
I had Smash on the Wii U and the 3DS, and the only DLC I had was Mewtwo because it came with it if you like pre-ordered it or whatever. So I missed out on a lot of the DLC. So I would prefer a deluxe version of Smash myself just because it's tried and true, but I didn't get to try everything. The only thing I'm going to say about Hyrule Warriors and Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is that I don't think the price point on Donkey Kong is there for me. They're releasing both of them at $50 games, I believe. And for Hyrule Warriors, that's fine. That's perfect. The Hyrule Warriors, they're adding so much content. They're putting all of the original DLC into the game. That is a full game to come out for that price. Tropical Freeze, they're adding in Funky Kong. Like, why do I need to pay full price for a game that's out on another system? It's essentially going to be the same game with Funky Kong, which is just an easy mode because the original game was considered pretty hard by Wii U standards.
Sure. So let me ask you this. We've talked about a lot of good stuff, a lot of things that have happened. We touched on a couple of the tougher points about this, but let me ask you what some of your biggest disappointments have been on this, aside from, say, the white bar games.
Okay, so we touched on my not hatred, but my little run-in with Tiny Barbarian, so we'll skip that one because I know that it's one of your favorites, and it's one of my meh. So as far as disappointments go, Bomberman was a disappointment. Not so much that it's not Bomberman. You know, it's there, but the price point for what it was when it first came out was extremely high. I paid it, but because I love Bomberman, but it wasn't quite all there. And I feel like they just, I don't know, they cram so much into the screen that it kind of gets overwhelming at some points for some people. It wasn't terrible for me, but I couldn't get into it like I could other Bombermans for some reason. So I was disappointed in that. Retro City Rampage, like, people can hate mail me all they want about that. The game is a great premise. I love the throwbacks, but the gameplay itself just, I don't know, like, it just didn't do it for me.
I'm kind of with you. I felt like it was rather shallow after you see a lot of the throwbacks. And don't get me wrong, there are just a ton of references to that era. But outside of that, I didn't feel very interested once I started playing the game. I kind of looked around, noticed, oh, hey, that's cool. Look at that reference to Metal Gear. Look at that sign. Oh, well, now what do I do? Because this is kind of boring.
Yeah, that was what RCR was for me. RCR's big draw was that we knew roughly what the print size was going to be. It was for sale only by VBlank through their website and eventually through their Amazon store. And we knew it was going to be limited. So that was the big draw for RCR for most people. Another disappointment for me was probably Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Not that the game was bad. And the subject matter is something that I hold near and dear to my heart because I love Dragon Ball. But the problem I had was they just tried to do too much with the controls. Like, I have to hold ZR and do this and hit these buttons. But if I hold, ZL, it's a different set. And it's just, after a while, it's like you do combos this way, you do specials this way, you mix and match. And like, it's so confusing that it's you're a little bit harder for some people to just pick it up. Like, it's not a game that you can put down for a while and then easily come back to necessarily as a result of that. So that was a big letdown. And really the only other thing I got is that Worms WMD is not getting a physical copy there. So
yeah, I'm kind of disappointed about the fact that they're not doing that either. That's Team 17, usually fantastic. Would have really supported them going physical with that particular title, and yet we're not going to see it. I don't really know yet if there's too many other titles I'm that disappointed. I guess I could say that Sonic not being on there was kind of a big disappointment early on when they announced that collector's edition and you saw, oh, hey, it's got a cartridge. No, that's just a fake Genesis cartridge and you're getting a download code. Eventually, I just went ahead and bought that on the eShop, but I would really love to see somebody pick that up and put that out. Hint, hint, LRG.
Yeah, you're of course referring to Sonic Mania because we did get a Sonic game physically that we don't talk about.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in that particular Sonic, to be honest. I did play a little bit of it, and that style just isn't me. I really enjoy the old school pixel 2D Sonic. And they really nailed it with Sonic Mania.
Yeah, I haven't played Sonic Mania, but I did play through Sonic Forces. I didn't think it was that bad. It caught a lot of flack, but because people were just like, Sonic in 3D is just so bad. But I enjoyed it for what it was, but I didn't go in with high expectations, so that probably helped out.
It's no Sonic 06. I'll just say that.
Yeah, at least that. So, but Team 17 not doing the WMD is even more disappointing by the fact that they have done physical releases of Switch games already. Didn't they do Overcooked? Was that them?
I believe so, yeah. And to be honest, that's a title that my son and my wife have spent some time playing, and they seem to both enjoy that.
Yeah, I bought that so that my wife and I could play it. Came in the day before Valentine's Day. Thanks, Team 17.
So, let's talk about the two huge titles just a little bit. We've already touched on Breath of the Wild, but I kind of want to take this in a different direction because although we've talked about that, we haven't really talked at all about Odyssey, Super Mario Odyssey. Massive success, huge game for Nintendo. Two insanely good and massive games in the first year of the Switch, and both of them get nominated for Game of the Year. I could not see that coming. I could not have predicted that.
Yeah, having not played Zelda, but knowing enough about it to say that it deserved the Game of the Year nod, Odyssey was kind of left field. You knew it was going to be good. As much as people hate on stuff like Mario 3D World and stuff like that, Mario games are, for the most part, good. They're always decent games. Odyssey was a breath of fresh air on what was slowly becoming a dated franchise. Because, I mean, you've got people that are playing Odyssey that are calling it the best Mario since 64 or the best Mario since Galaxy. So it's insane to think that they had Zelda and the best Zelda since Ocarina of Time and the best Mario since 64 at the same time. That's just insane. I know people who bought Switches just for Odyssey and just for Zelda. It's crazy.
Absolutely. In fact, I know that the person that and I'll shamefully say this, sold my Wii U to is a good friend of mine. I've known him for probably over 10 years, but he bought it from me simply because he wanted a cheap way to play Breath of the Wild. So he did that. Now, recently, he went and bought a Switch and rebought Breath of the Wild because he loved it so much, and turned around and is buying Odyssey because he wants to play through that. And if you think about that for a second, you think about the amount of greatness between those two games. Because honestly, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. I didn't think Mario 64 was as great as some people view through their nostalgia glasses.
Blasphemy.
I know that's going to be a huge controversial statement. I enjoyed Mario 64. I didn't think it was the best thing since sliced bread. I think Odyssey is amazing and blows all of the 3D Marios, whether they're pure 3D or, semi 3D, out of the water. I say that, this game probably is the greatest Mario of all time. And I'm coming from my love of Super Mario World on the SNES. And I'm still saying that about Odyssey.
Odyssey was one of those games that just caught fire. The second it hit, it just caught fire. And you don't hear about a lot of Mario games that have, the amount of depth that has all these worlds and these endings. It's crazy. And on top of that, you can play dress up, which, a lot of people think that that's just like a little fun mini game and stuff like that. My friend who he had a Wii U and he had Zelda on it, and I convinced him to buy a Switch. He bought the Mario Odyssey edition, which, shout out to those Joy-Cons. Those red Joy-Cons are amazing.
Beautiful.
They're red and black.
Yes.
Yeah, love it. I'm very jealous of that. Of course, it came with a download code, which I was not jealous of. But he got Odyssey and he loved it, and he said it was the best Mario he's played in forever. And then he went out and rebought Zelda. He still has his Wii U. He still has Zelda, but he went out and rebought Zelda. And then, of course, Zelda turned around and made him go out and buy a Pro Controller because he's like, I have to have a Pro Controller to play this game. I just cannot play with the Joy-Cons. It's impossible for him, he said.
Yeah, the ability for Nintendo to turn those two particular games around this year at that magnitude and really showcase the great aspects of the Switch really knocked me off my feet. The fact that you can literally be in the middle of a game, hit pause, pick your Switch up out of the dock, set your Pro Controller down, and go continue, sitting on the couch with your Joy-Cons. Or, if you want to set it down on a little table, you can pull those suckers right off and play like that. It's just kind of amazing. And then the way that they've incorporated some of the motion control where it feels a lot more natural. Because I have to say, back in the day with the Wii and even with the Wii U, none of the motion controls on a lot of games really felt great. They felt okay. They were nice. They were novel. Everybody loved the Wii Sports Bowling just because you could kind of do this thing with the joystick and curve it a little bit. But the accuracy of motion control on this system is far and away better than the other systems.
Yeah, I can agree with that. To take this in a direction that we haven't really looked at yet, is there a game that you think plays better sport in certain ways, like Joy-Cons dock, Joy-Cons in hand, Joy-Cons on the Joy-Con little controller tab, Pro Controller? Because what makes me think about this is when you're talking about docking it, putting it on a table, undocking the Joy-Cons and playing with it that way, it got me thinking about Mario versus Rabbids, or Mario Rabbids Kingdom, Mushroom Kingdom. That game, to me, is the ultimate lazy game. Not lazy in terms of development, but lazy as in I can turn it on and have one Joy-Con in one hand kicked over the back of the couch and one Joy-Con in the other hand kicked over the other side of the couch, and I could just lay back and just play that game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That kind of thing is so great. I could be sitting in bed and I can, put the screen in front of me, pull the Joy-Cons out, and just kind of have my arms down at my sides and play some of these games. And most of them don't even really require holding them in a more natural fashion. You can just kind of be nice and relaxed and lay there and, move the controllers around, move the joystick and hit the buttons, etc. And everything plays just fine. I've done that a couple of times. It's a nice aspect. So what would you say is the worst game, aside from WWE, because we already know how bad that is? That aside, what's the worst game in your mind that you've played on the Switch?
Okay, so I know that a lot of people are expecting me to jump on Troll and I, but I haven't actually personally played that. I have it. It's sealed. It's sitting on. It's sitting on my shelf. I know you did. I'll let you get to that in a second. It's sitting on my shelf collecting dust. I'll probably play it eventually. I'm not gonna lie, just because I want to see what the hubbub's about, and I know people who have played it and love it and sing its praises for some unknown reason. But as far as my most disappointed game, the game that I can't stand, it's actually going to be a bit of a surprise for some people, and that's going to be 88 Heroes. Honestly.
Ouch! I really enjoyed that. What didn't you like about it?
Some of those heroes are just so worthless.
They're terrible, some of them, but that's the idea.
But then, it's kind of cheap, too, because I got to the point where I had the Robo-Bat. I can't remember his name at this point. When he moves is when the rest of the world can move, kind of like that Red Hot game.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So I had him, and he was my last hero. So if I died, I could just retry, and I would be him. As long as I didn't collect any coins, I only had him. So the game became too easy at that point. And it's just like, well, if I collect coins and I get a terrible replacement hero, if I die with him, I get that replacement hero, the game autosaves. So I have to collect coins again, hoping he shows back up on my list. Otherwise, I have to restart the whole game over. And it's just like, some of those levels are just like, why are they designed this way?
Well, there's 88 heroes. They got to come up with, interesting things for 88 different characters.
That game could have been Robo-Bat only. They could have called it. They could have called it 87 heroes go home and one hero wins the day, and the game would have played the same way for me either way.
That's a really good point, though. I enjoyed the aspects of the game where you did get some really good randomization, but there were definitely times where I was frustrated as all hell because I would end up with Glass Girl. So basically, if you get touched at all in any way, she just dies, and she has no good power whatsoever. And you would have, 5 heroes exactly like that in a row and could do nothing with them. So I do see what you're saying, but I did get some enjoyment out of that title. You obviously know that I was not a big fan of Troll and I. If you haven't seen my video, people listening, go out to my YouTube channel, little self-advertisement. Go out, check out that particular video. And this was an ad hoc, on-the-spot recording after I had started it for a few seconds and realized how bad it was playing. It had some technical issues early on. Frame rate was, at the time, the worst of any game. This is pre-patch. I know that's been patched out, but I did give it a shot. I played, a good 15 minutes trying to go through the story, and it's slow. There are literal pieces of poop in the game. It's boring. And yet there's been a couple of people that took the time, played through it, and like you said, somehow they like it. I don't know very many of those people. I know one of those people, but ultimately that was probably my least favorite. However, I'm going to mention something that you and I haven't talked about yet. And this kind of hurts because I want this to be a better game. Ubisoft came out with Monopoly. Monopoly is a game that you and I and a number of other people have tried to play many times. And I have been in one successful full game. I think you were in one or two successful full games.
I've played 2 successful full games, yeah.
And we have tried this over half a dozen times.
Yeah.
There have been many technical issues with this game. I have footage, which I might be throwing into the YouTube video here, of a game where we got desynchronized on dollars, where you had a certain amount of dollars on your screen for you, and the rest of us were seeing a different dollar amount for you. It got down to the point where you're stuck in jail and you can't move, and you run out of money and you can't move, and the game literally freezes until somebody's kicked out.
Yeah, I had enough money on my side to pay that note, and when I paid it, I went into negative and my game froze, and then when I dropped out of the game, you guys then saw what my money really was.
I don't understand how a company like Hasbro can allow a license to sit there with Ubisoft for that game when there are such blatant technical issues. And then on top of that, Ubisoft missed the mark on releasing Monopoly for the Switch. We're talking about putting Monopoly onto a Nintendo product when you actually have a Nintendo Monopoly board that they didn't put in the game. Yeah. No Monopoly tokens for Mario characters. This is the ultimate mashup of all of this, and yet what we got is a Rabbids board.
And that Rabbids board is the only board I've successfully played my games on.
It might be a conspiracy. Maybe that's the only one they'll let you finish a game on.
That's what it feels like right now.
It does, doesn't it? So yeah, I would say, honestly, although I hated Troll and I, Monopoly is easily my biggest disappointment.
Oh, that strikes at my heartstrings, because like you, I want the game to be good, and it's not there, but I don't know that I could say it's a bad game. It's just not good right now. But I mean, look at it when it first came out. They had those big, long, loading times. And then the patch was bigger than some games are. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a big disappointment for me, and I'm sure that everybody else that we played with has similar feelings. I really think that you've got two companies here that could have come together for real gold, and they still have an opportunity. They could put out another patch and make this thing even better, get rid of some of the technical issues and add a board and some tokens, but I think they're going to miss the mark.
They made gold. Look at Mario Rabbids. That game is amazing for what it is.
That came out of one studio for Ubisoft that's, I think, in Italy, and they did a fantastic job, but it's the only game from Ubisoft right now on the Switch that is that good.
We'll get The Division on Switch. Watch. Rainbow Six Siege on Switch.
I really hope not. I don't want to see that garbage. But, it is what it is. So, I mean, you talk about, disappointments, and that was one of them for me. So we've seen the sales numbers that they released through December. I kind of want to hit on this because we've talked a lot about the different games, and we've talked about what this has been for a year. And then through December, they talked about how much they had sold. And I touched on this earlier, nearly 15 million units, like 14.86 million units, exceeding the Wii U lifetime sales in less than 1 year. Where do you think this lands at another quarter of sales after that? Once we see the end of March, where are these sales numbers?
I'm seeing them. I'm seeing them knocking at Sony's door. I see Sony with all the sales they had of their systems in their first years and how good they are. I see Nintendo showing the big boys, Microsoft and Sony, hey, we are still legitimate. We were once the best, and we know what it's going to take to become the best again. And they hit the ground running, and we've got so many things coming up that's going to bolster sales. I mean, look at Labo. Labo's coming up. I think people are going to go crazy for it. It's either going to be a huge disappointment or it's going to be an amazing thing. I think out of the gate, it's going to be amazing. I hope it can sustain its popularity for when it first releases.
But it's cardboard.
It is cardboard.
It's cardboard.
It's cardboard, but there's going to be so many things they're going to do with it. Yeah, it sounds lame. It looks lame. But we're not.
Don't get it wet.
We're not talking about Virtual Boy here, okay? This is something that is it's not revolutionary, not by any means. It's motion control, and stuff like that. But think about what it's going to do. You're talking about it's going to put switches into classrooms. It's going to put switches in the hands of families playing with their young kids, teaching them STEM things. Like this.
You're right. STEM is really hot right now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's STEM is just a massive thing. I know my child is young. He's going to school and they're pushing STEM all the time, and he's super interested in it. It's one of his favorite parts of his class day. And I think I joke about the idea of it's cardboard because, I've been a proponent of what Labo could be. And I've kind of argued against some of the folks that said it's cardboard. Well, you know what? When we had the Wii come out, it was air. It was nothing. It was just a Wiimote that you held and, you kind of did things with it in air using your imagination. This takes it to that next level. This takes what all of those extra little gadgets are inside of these amazing little Joy-Cons, by the way, which are filled, they're jam-packed with technology. And then you add these scenarios and these capabilities. It's got this IR camera on there that you can take a piece of cardboard, stick the two Joy-Cons on, and now the IR camera can kind of guide itself and be a little RC car. It can be, a little fishing rod thing. It's reading little stuff via the IR camera. It's reading using the motion sensors and determining, what to do. It's just, to me, this is kind of where Nintendo says, hey, you guys have been playing for a year on this thing. You got a lot of good games out here, but let's show you what else we can do with this thing. And this is where the brilliance of Nintendo comes, because they're not going to just stop making video games and start turning this into the Labo machine. They're going to do both at the same time.
Yeah. And we're talking about Nintendo is known for this. I mean, there's Sesame Street and math games on the NES and the Super NES. I mean, they're known for putting educational software on their systems. This is just more of that, but they have more opportunity to make it a bigger thing. We didn't have motion controls when we were playing on the NES, and we have those now. So they're taking advantage of the technology they have, and they're going to do something much bigger. And I'm thinking that with the added draw to places like classrooms, science labs and stuff like that, families, you're going to see that 14.86 million through December is going to go way up come April.
Oh, I think so. And we're going to get an opportunity to talk more next time about the Labo system. I want to kind of talk about some of the other things that have been announced or what's coming up. We've got this whole year that's behind us now. We've got a brand new year to look at. And even just in March, we've got a whole slew of possibilities, right? We've got games coming that are just great looking, insane kind of stuff. I can't even begin to tell you, how much I'm looking forward to some of the things like the next Kirby Star Allies. That to me is going to be a huge play. I know some folks aren't big Kirby fans. I love Kirby. I remember playing Kirby on the Game Boy, playing Kirby on the NES, and the things that he could do. Huge fan. Can't wait for something like that.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Kirby, and I'm also looking forward to Kirby. There are several titles that are coming out in March that are kind of weird to me. But Kirby is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. I mean, Attack on Titan's kind of iffy, but I'm looking forward to stuff like...
Well, what about Scribblenauts? Scribblenauts Showdown.
Scribblenauts is up there for me. I don't know how much okay, so Scribblenauts is going to be great when it's undocked because you have the touchscreen. You can draw using the touchscreen. That's going to be nice. I'm not a huge fan of stuff, drawing on the big screen using a controller. Snipper clips, I haven't really tried out yet. I feel like that's kind of a lot of the same kind of thing, but I was never big into stuff like, to give you a throwback, like Lethal Enforcers. If I don't have a light gun in my hand, I'm not playing that with a controller. And I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy Scribblenauts docked.
Well, I don't think you play it docked at this point. I think you just take it out, you sit there with it in your hands, and you have a good go at it like that. I think that's going to be an interesting one. I also see another title in March that I'm kind of interested in because, this year we saw RBI Baseball 17, and it wasn't, the greatest baseball game, It wasn't something that was overdone. I think they took a nice, solid baseball game, just a very basic, solid baseball game, and gave that to us last year. I'm kind of interested to see, what are they bringing this year? Are they going to take the exact same engine? Are they going to spruce it up? Are we going to get something more out of RBI Baseball 18?
The fact that they're bringing a second game in the series to the Switch makes me think that they liked what they saw with the first one and they're going to expand upon it. This is going to be the first annual sports title that's getting a second game on the Switch. We'll probably see an NBA 2K, more than likely, I would think. FIFA, maybe. WWE is probably not going to happen. If it does, I'll be very surprised. But this is the first one that's getting its second. It's the only one that we know of for sure that's getting a second. And RBI Baseball is an NES classic. Everybody talks about RBI Baseball. It wasn't the greatest game, but it was a playable game. A lot of people enjoyed it. I haven't played 17. I did get it for very cheap. I've watched some people play it, and I wasn't turned off by it. I think 18 could expand on it more. I would like to see motion controls. You know, people love Wii Sports because you could swing the Wiimote around. You know, give me a way to swing with the Joy-Con. I would like to see that.
There are two titles on here that I want to mention here because it kind of made me a little bit sore. I said this a little earlier. You have both the Moto titles, Aquamoto and Snowmoto, the racing games. Having imported both of these because we did not see them coming to the US. They were not announced until months after their release overseas. And then here we are. Right now, they're only listed at GameStop. Hopefully, they're not a GameStop exclusive. I'm not a huge fan of GameStop. They do have a few things going for them, though. And if anybody's interested in picking these things up, I'll tell you from my playthroughs on both of these, they're mediocre titles at best. They are not terrible looking, but they don't really play very well. So I would kind of steer people away if you're not interested in getting a full US collection.
Yeah, those are games that I'm not super interested in. I'm going to have them because they're coming out in the US, but they're on par with games like Troll and I and WWE. They're games that I'm going to have. I may try them eventually, but I'm not getting them to jump into. When it comes to racing titles, though, the Switch is already chock full of them. So it's not like I'm chomping at the bit for a racing game. So Aquamoto and Snowmoto are kind of down there. If I'm going to play a racing game, you're looking at Mario Kart, or Gear Club was kind of a surprise. Cars 3 is a huge surprise. I'm currently playing Cars 3 right now. Like, not the second, but that's the game that's in my Switch right now.
That's interesting. Cars 3 felt like it was a little bit on rails for me, but it wasn't terrible. No, I'd say that considering it's like a cartoon property based on a sequel that probably didn't even need to occur for the movie, it's not terrible.
That was my thinking. It's very good. And then Gear Club, when you're playing that, you can tell that it's a mobile port, but it works for the Switch. There's a lot of game in there. It's not hard. There's really nothing too hard about it at all, but there's a lot of game in there. There's a lot of tracks. So if I'm going to play a racing game, Snowmoto and Aquamoto are at the bottom of my list if they're even on it.
There's a couple of other interesting titles like Atelier, Lighty, and Suel. You've got the potential of Musinx coming out. The dates are kind of iffy on that one because some places are showing it for the 27th, some aren't yet. And then there's a title I want to mention on here because it kind of is going to bridge the gap into something else we haven't really spoken about too much. The Human Fall Flat release from the brand new European equivalent to limited run games, Super Rare Games. Human Fall Flat was their first title, and it sort of hit everybody out of nowhere. They're saying that they've got 5,000 copies available. I got my order in because I definitely want to have one of these, and I doubt this thing will get released on a cartridge in the US. What's your take?
So, I remember seeing this getting posted in the Discord, and I posted it to the subreddit, and it kind of caught fire there, and we started talking to the publishers on Twitter and stuff. I am all for competition with the limited release titles. I'm not super happy that it's an EU thing. That's just me. I'm not importing, so I didn't buy Human Fall Flat. but I've seen it played before on PC. Of course, it's on the eShop and stuff. My problem with Fall Flat as a game is that it's local co-op only and split screen. Like, I feel like it would probably appeal to me more if it was online. So as a game, that's where I stand on that. But as far as the publishing of limited supply games, it's a double-edged sword for me. I like the idea that we have a limited release game. It's got low numbers. It's going to be collectible. I wish some of them would be better titles, but I'm going to buy all the stuff that like Limited Run Games puts out because they're in the US. They're actually going to be set aside on their own little shelf because they're individually numbering theirs, whereas the rest of my collection is alphabetical on my shelf. But it's weird. The checkout system, SRG did it with a pre-order setup. They were like, here's how many we're going to have. Here's a pre-order link, start buying. And LRG is like, here's how many we're going to have. You're waiting until this time and you're going to just everybody jump out the gate. And I don't like that, but I understand why they do it, especially since they do 2 in one day. But SRG showed they can do it another way, but at the same time, this is their first game. So they didn't really have the following that LRG has. So we may see that change as time goes on. I'm interested to see what their next title is going to be. I'm hoping they can get something better than Human Fall Flat. Not that it's a terrible game. It's just not a game for me. But
it's got to be a tough thing to do as a brand new publisher who's trying to get into this type of game, to get a game into your kind of wheelhouse here that you can release that's not going to be too expensive, that's going to have enough drive for that type of thing, where you're going to actually sell out. Now, they had a little interesting stuff going on the website. It kind of froze the counter. Then they released a tweet that said, hey, there's only 100 left. Then, there was some controversy whether or not that was the case. I believe they've said they've sold out. But they did say that they were going to reserve some copies for release day, which is March 9th. So if you're listening and you have not had the chance to get your copy of Human Fall Flat reserved, look on their website. Be aware, March 9th, they're supposed to have some more. We also have some games, other games coming in March potentially. There is a slew of games dated on some websites from UIG. UIG is kind of like a big shovelware distributor. Things like My Little Writing Champion or Transportation Giant, Firefighters Airport, all these kind of crazy shovelware titles. Not sure whether they're going to come out yet in March. A lot of times these are placeholder dates, but I just kind of want to mention it in case anybody's watching that. Keep an eye out. And of course, always check both the NS Collectors subreddit and our Discord. That way you can see if there's any news on any of these titles. Kind of looking ahead beyond that, and maybe even staying with the limited run games thing for a moment. They've already announced a few of their games. They've announced that they're working on Saturday Morning RPG. They've announced that they're going to have Mercenary Kings and Flint Hook, both of which look like a heck of a lot of fun. I've not played any of those three. I don't have like a PlayStation 4 or a Vita or something where these have been released by them. So I don't know if you've played any of those, but I'm really looking forward to trying them out.
I've not played them myself. It seems like I've seen bits and pieces of Mercenary Kings. It's, they say it's kind of like a Metal Slug-ish, but and Metal Slug is one of the games I'd kind of like to see, a Metal Slug type game, Contra, Metal Slug on the Switch. That'd be kind of neat. But of course, Limited Run Games is also trying to push for their Twitter followers to get up so they can tell us what their first game's going to be. I'm really interested in that. All the hints are coming up, Golf Story, but then they're like, nobody's guessed it yet. So that's still up in the air. But as far as what they've released so far, it's a bit lackluster. Saturday Morning RPG was kicked around the Discord kind of as a joke. And then the next thing you know, they're like, hey, Saturday Morning RPG is working on the Switch. Guess what's coming to the Switch now? And it's just, I don't know. I'm a little bit disappointed in that.
I don't know. I like the premise behind it. I mean, it draws from a childhood kind of 80s cartoon pop culture thing. I really enjoy that. I know that some others really do, but it's probably playing a bit on the nostalgia.
I'm not bashing the game itself. Really what it boils down to is they've already released Saturday Morning RPG twice. They released it, solely digital It didn't do so well. They did the same with Breach and Clear. Didn't do so well. That was how LRG got their start. Was they were like, we're going to start making physical copies. What can we make first? So they make Breach and Clear and Saturday Morning RPG, and they sell out. And that's when they realize that there's a bigger market for them to do physical releases. So because there's like, it's Rabbit Studios. What's the name of the company that does Saturday Morning RPG and Breach and Clear? The people who own LRG.
Yes, it is the same guys. I'm not really sure what the name of the studio is for that, but it's exactly them. So
yeah, so that was the big draw, and I kind of feel like you've already released this twice, and it's obviously it's a pretty decent game. It got good reviews and stuff. It just didn't sell great at first. It's Mighty Rabbit Studios. That's who does it. So
there you go.
So I see that. I would like to see them, if they're doing Saturday Morning RPG, I kind of expect that they're going to do Breach and Clear now. Like, it's just, they released it digital only, and then they did Vita and PS4 physical releases as their first ones, which are the most heavily sought after copies now. Like, if you're trying to do a limited run collection of their PS4 and Vita titles, you're going to pay a pretty penny to get both of those games. I think Breach and Clear is a little bit more expensive, but it's like, it's been done. Like, a lot of people who want Saturday Morning RPG already own it. So when you're releasing it again on Switch physically, you're only really playing to the collectors. It's no longer a draw for players for the most part. You're going to have a few who are like, I haven't played it before. And you have a few who's like, oh, I'm going to play it on Switch because Switch is so great. And that's fine. But you're really appealing to the collectors when you release that game on the Switch.
Well, I think they're going to move this into a potential sequel. They did tweet that they are interested. They're looking into a possible Saturday Morning RPG sequel.
I mean, if that's the way, if that's the direction it goes, if this is their way of testing the waters to find that out, by all means, it's gonna sell out. It is. So just about everything they release sells out pretty quick. Everything they release does eventually sell out. So I guess they're gonna have to look at the timing, like how fast it sells out, to whether or not the draw is there. If it's close to one of the first titles they released, though, it's going to sell fast regardless of how good or bad it is. They could release Silver Surfer from the NES on as one of their first games, and it's going to sell out even though it's a horrible game.
I'd buy it. I don't want to tell you this, but I'd buy it.
Of course you would. Everybody would. It would sell out so fast. It could be the worst game in the world. It's going to sell out fast because it's one of the first ones. LRG is known for being collectible. People want it. And it also makes a lot of people mad when they go to buy these games and they can't. That's why I think SRG coming into the game is probably a good thing. We also hear that the quantities that are required by Nintendo of America, because we already know that SRG is dealing with 5,000, we hear the quantities by Nintendo of America are even higher than that. So the
rumor is 10,000, right?
Yes. So if it gets published out at 10,000, it's going to be more readily available. It might not sell out as quick as normal, and that's going to make a lot of people happy. But I mean, and like I said, SRG's, this is their first run in the game. So they've got Human Fall Flat, it's done by a studio. This is a London-based company that's doing a studio that's based in London. And yeah, they don't have a whole lot to jump to. At least LRG has their own original release games like Mighty Rabbit Studios. They can release a couple of games from there. But SRG does have the option of stuff. Look at Tiny Build. Tiny Build's bringing like 4 or 5 games to the Switch this year. They're planning.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
And only one of them is physical. So think about that. They are a UK-based game company. SRG is a UK-based limited release company. There's potential there.
Both of these companies, as well as one that hasn't yet published for the Switch, but they've expressed interest, which is called Strictly Limited Games. We see them. We also see what's happening with V-Blank, with their RCR. We see what happened with Signature Edition doing a special version in the UK of the Count Lucanor. We see these kind of niche publishers coming through now, putting games out in limited quantity. I think that it's going to be really hard to track. I think, yes, there are some interesting sources to draw from. I'd love to see LRG reach out to Team 17 and say, hey, since you're not putting Worms WMD on a cartridge, you mind if we do it for you? And then give them a cut. Let's get them on board. You could even have, even though this won't happen, I know this won't happen, but you could have one of these groups reach out to Capcom and say, hey, you didn't want to put that second collection on a cartridge. How about we do that for you? Now, of course, that's not going to happen either.
That's a deep dig.
But wouldn't that be great?
It is a very deep dig. Yeah, and then V-Blank, they did physical releases of Guacamelee and RCR, and they've got another game coming out here pretty soon, or they've been showing a game a lot lately. So, we may see more physical from them too.
I think so.
But yeah,
I think so.
I would love to see a company reach out and pick up, especially Worms WMD. I don't think I would go with a limited release game. I think I would rather see somebody like Nicholas pick up Worms WMD. I want to see that on the shelves, and I want to see that selling a lot of copies. I don't want to see it limited, but
I would love to do that with Worms, because Worms has been around for a very long time. It's got a pretty broad fan base. I think a lot of people were disappointed that they weren't going to put that onto the Switch. So I do think you've got an opportunity there that Nicholas could jump in and do that kind of thing, and see maybe there's a partnership that could be had between them and Team 17. We've got a few other games that have been announced, things that are not necessarily coming yet in March, but just stuff that's been put out there. And I kind of want to touch on a few of these before we kind of start wrapping things here. If we look through the list here, first one that sticks out to me is Steep. Steep is supposedly still coming.
Steep's vaporware to me at this point.
It's spending it couldn't be any more vaporware than Redout, right?
Yeah, well, at least Redout we have pre-orders for.
Well, we have pre-orders, but we have no game, and it's been in pre-order status since before the unit came out, before the Switch was on shelves, which is kind of disappointing. I think they missed the mark, and I think Fast RMX beat them to it. Yeah,
and then we have another one jumping in. Trailblazers is fixing to come out. It's going to be another contender for that sort of game, like the fast driving sort of game, and it adds co-op.
And what about the possibility of Nintendo at some point here releasing a sequel to F-Zero?
That would, I think the head of a lot of fanboy clubs would explode.
Absolutely, but people would eat it up.
Yes, it would be insane. I tell you what I would not want to see if they do something like that is what Square Enix did with Lost Sphere, where it was you can pre-order or you can buy it on eShop and then the pre-orders just sell out. Nintendo doing something like that would freak me out. And I feel like F-Zero is the perfect title. I feel like F-Zero is the perfect title to do that with, though. It's just like, here's a little taste, now buy it on the eShop.
No, I don't think Nintendo would ever lock that down on a major title like that. I don't think they'd put that game only on the eShop. They're just too big to do that. They like to put everything on cartridge. There's looking at the list of titles here, there's one that I think a lot of people were surprised that they're going to do this. Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn.
There's no surprise. That game is Game of the Year.
Game of the Year 2018. You all heard it right here first, folks.
Yes, that's going to
be Harvest Moon Light of Hope. Now, this is one thing that GameStop has going for them. In addition to the game, if you order, you can get the chocolate cow plushie. I don't know about you. I've seen this thing, seen the picture of it. I jumped on a pre-order. I'm not a huge plushie person, but that thing is adorable. My kid will love it. My wife will love it. It'll be on my shelf.
I don't know that I'm going to pre-order Harvest Moon. It has the staying power. It has the fandom and stuff. I wasn't a huge Harvest Moon fan back in the day. And I've already got Stardew Valley, and Stardew Valley, they are different games, but they share a lot of similarities. I feel like Harvest Moon is a game that I could probably wait on, but what I can't wait on is somebody like Nicholas or LRG contacting Concerned Ape and giving me a physical copy of Stardew. That's what I want.
If only, right?
Exactly.
So there's De Blob and De Blob 2 were announced.
I got nothing.
What's your take?
I got nothing on those. I looked at the screenshots. I got nothing on those. I don't know. That feels that it's like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Let's see. Super Chariot, which apparently is an enhanced re-release of the co-op Wii U game Chariot, is coming to the Switch.
Didn't like Chariot. Didn't like it. I know that is it the same Chariot that Limited Run released on the PS4?
This I do not know. This I do not know.
I'm pretty sure that's what we're talking about. I didn't like it. It reminds me. It has like the same graphic style as like Splunky, and I like Splunky, but I I don't know. You're dragging if it's the same thing I'm thinking of, you're dragging a mine cart around behind you and like finding ways to get it over obstacles and stuff. It's just, I don't know. It's an interesting premise. Puzzle game players will like it. It's not my cup of tea. I didn't like it.
What about, let's see here. I've taken a look at this Riot Civil Unrest. Now, it seems like a strange thing to put into a game. It's a riot simulator, but they base it on real world events. And if you see some of the video for this thing, it's kind of interesting.
So like the riots themselves are took place in real life. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's kind of reenactments or similarities to actual real life riots. And it's sort of like a reenactment.
It looks to me like a zoomed in version of like SimCity, where you're just controlling the disaster that's occurring. But I mean, I like the premise. I like the idea. It's very Party Hard looking to me, which I loved Party Hard, but obviously it doesn't play the same way. But that's what it looks like to me. Yeah,
there's some interesting aspects there. I see this list of games, and there's a couple other ones here I really want to touch on. I got to get your take on this. Diablo 3 is rumored. Diablo 3.
Just give it to me. That's all. I mean, I bought it on 360. I bought the expansion on 360. Expansion's still sealed. Never played it. Don't care. Would buy it again. I've got it on the PC. I bought it for my wife on PC. She never plays it. Don't care. Would buy it for her again. Diablo is just one of those games that I sunk many hours in the original game. I sunk many months and years into the second game, and I have sunk many months into the third game. And Blizzard cannot do very much wrong for me. They make some weird choices with some of their patches and some of their games, but I have played, with the exception of Lost Vikings, I have played hours into all of their games. I have contributed thousands of dollars into games like Hearthstone. Just give me Diablo 3 on the Switch. Now, give me portable. Give me local LAN. You give me local LAN on Diablo 3 on the Switch, and I am a happy camper. I may not pre-order Titan Quest.
Do you believe the Switch can do Diablo 3 justice?
Yes, I do. I believe the Switch. Absolutely. I have seen, some of the games that are out on the Switch. Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey is colorful, lively, moving. We've seen in-depth graphics of games like Zelda. I feel like it's doable. We've seen first-person shooters that run pretty good. Even the footage of Payday 2 looks really good in terms of smoothness. But I feel like the Switch could do. The Switch is just as powerful as the 360, if not more. Right? It's more powerful than the 360. We see the 360 playing Diablo 3. I see no reason why. They're developing Titan Quest, which is a THQ Nordic. We don't know when that's coming out. I've already pre-ordered it with a friend of mine who wants to play it because it's co-op and it's an action RPG, and we've played it on PC and it's great. But if you give me Diablo, and I take that back. I won't cancel my pre-order because I got it back when Amazon had that mix-up and it was 40% off. But it will sit on my shelf and probably not get opened for a very long time if I have Diablo. You send me to Tristram, and you've got me stuck for months. Nothing else will go in my Switch.
It will certainly
somebody else is playing it.
It will certainly be interesting if this rumor is true. I'll tell you that, because I would bet that on the heels of that, we could potentially see a new Diablo within the next few years.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, Diablo is just one of those games that just has a cult following. The people who hate it are still going to buy it. Just put it out on the Switch with a tried and true. Don't go back to the original version. Do what you're doing now with the rifts and the super rifts and all that stuff. It's obviously the seasons are going to be a little bit weird because like on the other consoles they're a little bit weird too. PC's getting all the love, and that's fine. It's a PC game, but you put it on console, you put it on Switch, it's going to sell. It's going to sell good. It's going to have support. I'm already, I'm salivating at it. And it's not even confirmed.
No, not at all. but it would be nice to see. So another one that's kind of an interesting thought here, Flashback, but not the original 1992 version, a remastered version of Flashback. I remember playing this 20 years ago and thinking, wow, this was great at the time. I don't know that I want to pick this up again.
Don't know a whole lot about it. It was a Mega Drive game. I didn't have...
It actually started off as a PC game, if I recall correctly. That's what I played it on. The movement is kind of slow and interesting. You can kind of take your time through the game. With a remaster and showing some new graphics, that could play out really interestingly, but I feel like it's going to date itself very quickly. So I was kind of interested to see that this was going to come up. Another one that I think is going to be interesting, and this is not coming to the US, so I don't know how much you've looked at this, but Neo Atlas 1469. They're getting this both in Japan and in Asia, and supposedly both of those versions will have English on it. The idea behind this is that you run a trading company back then, and you're trying to map out what the world looks like. And you do that by controlling your admirals, controlling the people that are out in the ocean, and you're gathering information, trying to convey a message. And if done right, you can make the map of the world look very much like the world. But if done wrong, it can look like a big giant mess with land and sea kind of everywhere. So the kind of the premise behind that seemed like an interesting thought.
It's not my kind of game. It looks like a top-down cartoony Civilization. Like, that's what it looks like to me. I mean, the premise is different than Civilization, obviously. That's just like the overview is what it looks like. It's not my kind of game. It's a simulation fantasy game, and it's about sailing. I can see it appealing to a certain crowd. It's just not there for me. I'm not hating on it. It's just, well, there's some games I know I won't play.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain type of individual that likes this kind of game, and it's kind of piquing my interest a little bit. So I'm going to check that out.
This kind of feels like a niche title, kind of like This Is the Police.
You know, to be honest, This Is the Police is actually really interesting. I haven't put as much time in it as I would like because I've got a bunch of other games here that I want to play. But, you know, it's kind of a neat idea. The half visual novel kind of game has really sort of taken off on the Switch. And that's sort of what that is, in a sense. You're still kind of guiding it through. But we've seen a few of those types of games. We have that Batman Telltale game that came through, which is sort of a visual novel-ish kind of game. We've got a few other ones coming. Song of Memories is a visual novel, although somewhat graphic. There's been, you know, plenty of interest in this type of genre. So I think the portable platform works really well for that.
I know a lot of people who are chomping at the bit for a good visual novel. And I know a lot of people who played all those games and really enjoyed them. So it's this is a game that I'll probably if it doesn't come out in the States, I'll probably not play it at all. If I do play it, it's because I picked it up cheap from like a Humble Bundle or something on PC. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's my kind of game. It looks interesting. It's just not the kind of game I normally play.
Now we've gone through, and there's tons of stuff that's happened this year, right? We've had what's arguably the revival, in a sense, of Nintendo with the Switch. Nobody can argue that the Wii U was pretty much a failure. It's not to say that it didn't have good games. It had some great games on it. It had some absolutely fantastic games on it. There's games on there that I want to see either released still for the Switch or at least sequeled. I'd love to see a new Mario Maker. I'd love to see a few things. What do you want to see from Nintendo in this next year that has yet to be announced? What types of things are you kind of crossing your fingers for, holding your breath on?
I would love to see Dragon Ball FighterZ come to the Switch. I don't know how intensive it is or why they didn't release it before, but I'd like to see that, or like a Mortal Kombat XL, or even the next Mortal Kombat be nice. Smash 4 Deluxe would be good. Contra Metal Slug. Of course, we got a game, Mercenary Kings, coming from LRG that may scratch that itch a little bit. I'd love to see a good Mario Party 11. We've got some bad party games 1-2 Switch was a disappointment. It's just like a tech demo.
Party Planet.
Yeah, Party Planet. I have it. I've not played it. I was going to play it this weekend with my friends, and we ended up not doing that. So
no, Mario Party would like you said, a good Mario Party would definitely be welcome. Although I have to say that Nintendo's going to have to ramp up their Joy-Con production if they're going to release a Mario Party.
Yeah, or limit it to 4-player. Like if they limit it to 4-player, and because I believe Mario Party 10 was 5-player. You could have 4 normal players and then one person playing Bowser. And you could do like a 4-player, because 4 Joy-Cons isn't unheard of for some people to have. And then on top of that, if you don't have 4 Joy-Cons, if you're playing with a group of people, chances are one of them probably has a Switch and they have their Joy-Cons.
Oh, certainly.
So I feel like that would go over well. I'd like to see a physical release for Stardew. And then outside of games, I'd like to see Netflix or Prime Video, Crunchyroll, Twitch. I'd like to see some support there. And then custom controller designs. You know, Xbox Design Lab lets you build your own controller pretty much. I feel like the Joy-Con is the perfect platform. It's going to cost a whole lot more than a normal Joy-Con, but the people who want one are going to pay $120 for it, you know, ballpark. So I feel like that would be something for them to look into, because the customization of Joy-Cons is already out there. You see people with those atomic purple Joy-Cons, people are eating them up.
Well, we haven't seen what we thought we would see, right? So before the Switch was actually released, kind of in that time frame, especially between when the January and October announcements happened and when the system was released, we had a lot of people kind of come up with their own designs, things that they would guess at and say, hey, I could see the right Joy-Con looking like a GameCube, you know, controller when they do Smash. And we haven't seen anything like that. There's been a number of third-party, you know, like wired joysticks or game pads. Nothing as far as the actual Joy-Cons are concerned. And I'm wondering why that hasn't arrived yet. I'm kind of hoping that will. I'm also kind of hoping that along the lines of things that they should bring from the Wii U, I'd love to see Captain Toad on the Switch. That is an amazing game. Tons of fanfare. People would buy it again. People that didn't get a chance to play it would definitely play it on the Switch. A new Pikmin would definitely be something you would have a lot of people interested in, especially something along the lines of the classic Pikmin would be just kind of a really fun thing for, you know, co-op and lots of party playing, that type of thing. I would like to see, like I said, a new Super Mario Maker. I don't necessarily want a port of the Wii U one. If that's all I get, I'll take it. But I would really like to see a sequel. I'd like to see them expand the tile sets, expand on what they put in, put more enemies, more types of levels, more skins. Let's get Mario 2 stuff in there. Let's even throw some, you know, maybe some Game Boy skin in there and just really kind of expand what people can make out of Mario Maker. And then, this is kind of a sad subject for me. Konami has kind of gone downhill, as you know. But I would really like to see them bring Castlevania, the classic 2D Castlevania, in a new flavor back to the Switch. Come back to Nintendo. Come on, Konami. Listen, you've got a ton of people that grew up playing Castlevania games, and your best stuff was in 2D. There's a couple of decent 3D titles, not superb, but you bring 2D Konami back, you will have people just salivating.
You can probably point to how well Axiom Verge was received. It's a Metroid kind of clone, but it's a Metroidvania clone. And so it was received really well. It did really well. But I feel like if Konami brings something to the Switch, and chances are it's either not going to be new or it's going to be a pachinko game or something weird like that.
I hope not.
Yeah, that'd be really weird. The Super Mario Maker, though, I'd really like to see. The only problem I have with it, again, is like what I have with Scribblenauts, is that you're not going to really be able to take, you know, full advantage of the touchscreen unless you're playing in docked or undocked mode. And then when you're playing in docked mode, it's kind of weird. That's why the Wii U was like the perfect platform for Mario Maker. And I want it to come to Switch. I'm just interested to see how they're going to make it work.
I think you're definitely going to have to play it undocked if you're doing any level design, but you can certainly sit and just play level after level after level with it docked. So, you're going to have both aspects of this. I think the only place it's going to hurt is with level design. It's going to be cumbersome if you have to use a joystick. They could potentially go the route of flipping your Joy-Con over and kind of pointing at the screen, kind of going with maybe a Wiimote style of control, since we know that it can do that kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see where they take that. I think Konami, the closest thing we're going to get to that Castlevania is that Kickstarter, Bloodstained, which has a huge pedigree in the Castlevania line. It's got a lot of guys and talent on their team that's bringing those talents to making this. I signed up for that Kickstarter. My understanding is that we should see it this year at some point. Did you jump into that?
I did not back the Kickstarter, but from what I understand, there will be a physical release of the game outside of the Kickstarter exclusive stuff. And I mean, it's got Solid Snake, man. It's got the voice of Solid Snake in it. So
Can't go wrong.
I do plan on picking that up for sure. I do hope there was another one that was kickstarted or Indiegogo or something that's supposed to get a physical release after the fact.
That one's Indivisible.
Yeah. So both of those games I did not back, but I do plan to pick up when they get released. And probably pick up pretty quickly, not wait for them necessarily, but I did not back them on Kickstarter, no.
Well, I think that'll bring us to the end of the show, and I know that we want to thank you for joining us.
And for more discussions, you can visit the /r/NS Collectors subreddit.
Or you can chat with us daily in the Nintendo Switch Collectors Discord. You can find a link to that below or in the sidebar of the subreddit.
You can join us next time for another look at what's going on with the Switch. So until then, this is Cyrix.
And this is Soul. See you next time.